Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to welcome Senator Todd Young of Indiana for a fireside chat with Jenilee Keefe Singer, Senior Director for Government Affairs at SCSP.
Can we hear?
We can go down one more. There we
go.
Senator. Thank you all. Welcome back from lunch. I hope you have full bellies and happy hearts here. Senator, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
It's really, it's a pleasure to have you. I know most of the audience are really familiar with your work, but it's always good for a reminder. It's worth noting your roles on Senate Finance, Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation, Small Business, Intelligence. You're in a lot of committees.
Yeah.
Doing a lot of work.
Yeah, that's right.
Chairing the National Security Commission on Emerging Biotech. You keep busy, I can tell. But really, through all of this work, you help shape national policy on U.S. competitiveness and science and innovation. So you're a busy guy, and really, you've been a leading voice in ensuring that U.S. investments deliver real-world, real-action results. So I'm really excited to talk to you today about what you've been doing and hear your thoughts on, how we can merge AI and science to have those real-world results. So,
well, thank you. That has been a big focus of my work, and I know a big focus of SCSP's work in recent years, and so it's a privilege to be here, and I thank everyone in the audience for being here. There are a lot of stakeholders out there that I know we've had the opportunity already to do some good together, and hopefully some of the things we discussed today we can figure out how to partner on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we were just talking about the op-ed that you wrote with former Deputy National Security Advisor Matt Pottinger that was in the Washington Post. And in that article, you draw a historical parallel between the Cold War and today. And you talk about the space race and suggesting that there's a similar strategic urgency. Can you talk to me a little bit more about that? What was your thinking behind that?
Well, this is almost, in some circles, I think it's regarded as a trite historical metaphor, is to remember the space race and to call Americans to once again to this century's challenge, albeit somewhat different in nature. But there's so many commonalities between that moment in time and now. One of which is we are, I think, generally perceived to be in a historic competition against an adversary whose economy, though their system's different, their economy on a number of fronts seems to be advancing in alarming ways, and their tech development is impressive in some key areas of strategic importance. We are also at a point in which we're starting to question our ability to get big things done in this country. We're lamenting the weaknesses in our system. We're lamenting our domestic politics, and so this is all coming to a head. And I think it's encouraging to remember a period of time in which we use those external challenges to become a better version of ourselves. And we gave rank and file Americans a role to play in that effort. The space race was compelling to people in part because of the things I've already mentioned, but also because on the back end of the space race, our leaders painted a picture about what the future would look like in terms of job creation, in terms of the sorts of technologies that we're trying to produce. We're trying to produce rockets. We were called to send people to the moon. We offered people opportunities to work in our defense industry, in our aerospace sector. And I think here again, we have an opportunity, whether it's in developing next generation semiconductors and continuing to onshore the ability, working with partners and allies to manufacture those semiconductors, or if it's in the area of artificial intelligence, We can make things again. And so I think connecting these research imperatives and development imperatives with commercialization opportunities is actually very key. But this takes legislative leadership. This is going to take some discrete policies, and it can't be done in a partisan way. If we're going to provide the sort of policy certainty necessary to unlock private capital and to motivate entrepreneurs and investors, then we're going to need to make permanent law, and that's done in a bipartisan way in this country.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the role the American people have to play, and you kind of touched on private capital and government. What role does the U.S. government have, perhaps state governments and even academia and industry, in building what you call this golden age of innovation?
Yeah. I think that's the president's term, but occasionally I do employ it. I absolutely do employ it because I think for so many of my constituents across the industrial Midwest, it really resonates. It gives them an immediate sense of what we're trying to accomplish, and they see themselves as being part of that golden age. It's not an elite exercise. It's the opposite. We're trying to democratize opportunity. At the same time, we make important advancements in science and tech and create job opportunities. But the federal government's responsibility, first and foremost, is we want to remove burdens that might constrain innovation and manufacturing. Sometimes those are the form of heavy-handed regulations that either need to be optimized and rewritten or instead removed entirely. And so that's where I begin. But it goes a little further than that. If we're really going to create paths to commercialization of things we need, then we need to make sure that we bake into the pricing of those important products a national security or an economic security premium, incentivizing private capital to go invest in those things that benefit us collectively more than they benefit any individual entrepreneur or firm. An example would be semiconductors, right? Where we have now baked in through our laws a national security premium. You could either do that arguably through a tariff or through a series of grants or some combination thereof. We need to do the same thing across a number of other tech areas. Stated differently, we need to treat other tech areas the same way we have for generations treated our military. There is a massive national security premium to investing in aircraft carriers and radar and other technologies that benefit our warfighters. So let's recognize in this day and age, our competition is primarily a techno-economic competition with our primary adversary, China. So let's invest in quantum, protecting ourselves from this post-quantum crypto environment, making sure that we're on the winning end of that competition. Let's make sure that we're attentive to hypersonics, investing in National Science Foundation. And you just go down the various tech areas that I know are important areas of emphasis. Biotech, an area that, as you just mentioned, I've been working on for a couple of years. We need to change how we think about security, and that's the mission of your organization, and this lens is how I have approached most of my work in Washington.
Yep. You've really made that connection between that early stage R&D and how that does connect to long-term national security and economic security, and you did put that into action in the CHIPS Act. How can the lessons from the CHIPS Act be applied to your work on NSCEB or quantum or the other areas you just mentioned?
So for those who'd like my long-form essay, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, I actually have received pretty positive feedback on this very topic. You can Google a tech power playbook for Donald Trump 2.0. And that was my stab back in early February on how this administration can actually learn some really valuable and important lessons from the CHIPS and Science Act and apply these to other areas from biotech to to crypto and many others. And I distilled my lessons learned into 3 buckets. One is we need a strong defense, research security, export controls, and other vectors of defense to make sure that as we develop things, as we cultivate talent, we are not just bleeding the fruits of all of those investments and the fruits of our system off so that they can be leveraged by the Chinese Communist Party or other malevolent actors. Next, we need a strong offense. And a strong offense, here again, means a lot of things, but it means government action, not inaction. We don't just passively wait for the market economy to solve all of life's problems. I think Friedrich von Hayek would, being a trenchant analyst and observer of his scene in his day, would update his economics to reflect current realities about supply chain resiliency and the need for national security investments across a broad swath of areas. So let's account for reality and make these critical investments in talent, in research, and other areas as we called for in the CHIPS and Science Act. And then lastly, we need to work with partners and allies. Our goal here is not to become independent of every country on major inputs. So we really do need to clarify our thinking about it, what exactly we want to specialize in this country. And to sort through those things, I would say we de-risk out of those countries that we just, time and experience has proven us, we cannot rely on them for key inputs. China would be the most notable example, but there are others. De-risk out of China, and then establish deeper and broader relations with particularly large economy, democratic countries that time has proven that we can trust the vast majority of times for the vast majority of things. And let's leverage our comparative advantages with those countries. And the more those relationships, assuming we don't have established single points of failure with any country for national security relevant things, the more those relationships we can establish, the more redundancies we build into our system, the more we can pool capital efficiently and deploy it efficiently to buy things that we all value and we all need. And then trust is built through these relationships over time, and we can leverage that trust against the CCP. And incidentally, the CCP has an export-oriented economy. Yeah. And if we work together on technology after technology to establish common standards, operation standards of safety and performance with other countries, if China wants to sell into the rest of the world through their export-oriented economy, they will have to abide by our standards. And so game, set, and match if we can get there. So what I'm looking for is a plan approximating what I lay out in the essay and what I just articulated here from, we didn't get it from the last administration, and I continue to encourage its consideration from the current administration.
So it sounds like you think the way to outsmart our competitors, out-innovate our competitors, is to really invest strategically and to work with others, right? That sounds like what you're saying.
That's exactly it. And I regard our use of industrial policy as primarily an instrument of foreign policy, not domestic policy, which is not how it's discussed domestically, because the obvious value proposition to most Americans is it creates a job for them or in their community, and that's great. We should celebrate the happy byproducts of industrial policy, which is new manufacturing opportunities in this country, but we have to be selective about the things that we subsidize through industrial policy, and I've laid out a framework to identify what those areas are.
You talk about your framework. How do you think we measure success? Is that something we can do in the short term, or do you think that's more of a long term? play?
You know, I've thought about this. This is not a formulaic sort of question. I've thought about what is the key metric we could
there's
use
no
to identify
like standard
success.
rubric.
And this is one of these uncomfortable areas where you just need to apply what attorneys or judges call multi-factor analysis. How resilient do we feel? How much do we feel like we can trust our counterparts? How many nodes of vulnerability in our supply chains do we have? Do we feel like that's enough? So what this lends itself to is constant assessment, constant adjustment, recognizing that there are no perfect solutions, there are only trade-offs, and learning from our experiences. The CHIPS and Science Act is only a couple of years old, and there are going to be a lot of lessons learned. And we need to be comfortable with that and sort of approach this like Silicon Valley would approach a startup and develop a body of doctrine around economic security, something I've suggested in the past, just as we develop military doctrine and learn over time and sort of cultivate a culture of self-criticism and come up with documents that evolve over time through national security strategies. I think we need to do this with respect to economic security as well.
So let's take biotech as an example here.
Yes.
I feel like you're going to be okay with that example. What are some areas in perhaps the biotech space, that NSCEB talked about, that you think can take the lessons learned so far, this framework, and kind of apply it to moving it forward?
So first steps first, baby steps. China has a plan. Part of their made in China formula is an emphasis on biotech. We need a plan because of the national security premium here. Now, I didn't say what some in this town would misunderstand me to say. We don't need a 5-year plan to manage biotech, but we do need a plan to make sure that we are attentive to the national security risks of working with China in biotech and attentive to the upside opportunities of seeing more biotech innovation in bioindustrial areas and bioag areas, and making sure we make the things that we innovate, make those things here as opposed to in adversary countries. And so that plan needs to be developed with consultation with all our private sector stakeholders, our universities, but also every department of government, and it needs to be updated on a regular basis. And so I propose, and the Commission has proposed, establishing a point person in an office within the White House to see across agencies and establish this plan. It will be a biotech coordination office. Then we need to deregulate, because right now biotech entrepreneurs often have to deal with several different regulatory entities, USDA, EPA, and others to receive approval for their products, and that can be tedious, laborious, and time-consuming, and it only makes sense if you can expect large margins on the very end, and there's a strong demand signal. That means biopharma. But if we can improve the regulatory atmosphere, you'll see more ag bioscience and bioindustrial innovations in manufacturing, which are the areas where we really need to up our game, so to speak. And then we need some targeted investments. In the grand scheme of things, $15 billion, which collectively is how much the investments amount to in our recommendations. We have 50 recommendations, and we propose, in short, investing in talent, everywhere from the technician level up to the postdoctoral level. And we need investment in research, an area of continued debate here in Washington, but we really need to up our game, not just in NIH research, but NSF and DARPA and other areas. Lastly, we'll need some of those incentives baked in so that we can commercialize in this country the things that we make. And that, in short, is what the Commission report offers. For those who want to look at the full report, visit biotech.senate.gov.
Nice plug.
Yeah, thank
I
you.
like that. There you go.
Yeah.
You talked in there about, having the right workforce, the people, manufacturing, all of those pieces. Indiana is actually a great example of doing that, not on the coasts, which is always wonderful. You have great universities like Purdue is really invested in semiconductors. How do you take the lessons and how your home state has used national policy to really drive it home to create jobs and opportunity for people?
So we do have coasts. It's the coast of the Ohio River and Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
But they're not the sort of coasts that
you
most
know
people
what I
think
mean.
of.
You know
yeah,
what I mean.
Exactly. But what we really have, aside from an amazingly beautiful country, is very talented people and hardworking people and institutions that, with intention, have decided to train these people in useful disciplines. Purdue University has world-class talent from solid-state physics, important for semiconductors, to ag biotech, to hypersonics, of all things. Notre Dame, many of the same discrete disciplines. Indiana University, a great med school, really innovative. And so we need to continue to marshal those schools to produce more talent, and we need to retain more of those people. And we retain more of those people by maintaining a positive business environment so that companies that value that talent will locate in the state. And we also need to be aggressive, which is something I've emphasized to a lot of Indiana's leaders in recruiting new businesses, always looking for that next opportunity. And if they want us to train new talent and new disciplines, we have to be adaptable so that we can meet business needs. And I would say, on balance, our institutions are doing a very good job of that. I do think there's some real opportunities for improvement in pre-K through 14. And that's an area where I'm really encouraging Indiana to up its game.
I know we want to help other states too. So how do you think, there are lessons from Indiana that could be applied to other states? Are there best practices, for lack of a better phrase, that, could be used across the country?
It's just easy to do business in Indiana, and some of that is a function of public policy. We've done a good job of making sure our regulatory atmosphere is informed by the needs, not just of business, but of other stakeholders. And I think we have a really strong regulatory atmosphere, a generally great place, atmosphere for doing business, but culturally as well. Hoosiers, reputationally, I could maybe identify a few exceptions, but we're fairly understated people, and we like understated people. And understated people, oftentimes fairly introverted, soft-spoken people, aren't focused on self-promotion. They're just focused on getting the job done, and they invite more people to the table because they want to get the answer right. And I think it lends itself to tackling big challenges, taking us full circle here, right? Lends itself, applying that team sort of mindset to new challenges and being sort of first to the punch. At least that's my theory of the case, and that's how I'm encouraging my state to think about this. And frankly, this could apply to a lot of different states and a lot of communities. And I just really sense a great opportunity now. And I sense, because I have 4 kids, and they want to do something really meaningful, something important with their lives. And I sense that people are ready to be challenged to do something important. It's okay to, criticize the previous leaders and the weaknesses of our institutions, and sometimes that can lead to really positive results. But at some point, once you've identified the weaknesses, you need to come up with discrete plans and people who can execute those plans, and that's where I think people who are motivated to do so come in.
You have plans.
I get plans. Yeah. I'm going to enjoy some of that amazing food that many of you have been feasting on living up here. Yeah.
We tortured the senator here. He had to walk right through all of the food as you were all eating.
Yeah, it looked good. It looked good. I think my staff is way out there.
We'll get you something after.
No,
I
good.
do have a few more questions. You're talking about people at the center and all this tech transition. How do we ensure that we're bringing all the workers, everyone in America, with us along for this journey? What can we do to make that work?
Some of it's a matter of communications. We want to let them know that these sorts of conversations are not just elite conversations, that we can't tackle choose your challenge without them. Mm-hmm. And that in almost every case has the benefit of being true. Like, we need people to show up at the new factories and stay at the new factories in these jobs, because what they're doing is important, and it takes a lot of money to train them, and leads to continuity in the businesses that actually have to execute the new policies and the plans that I talk about. So it's a communications challenge, but we also have some, in some ways, harder challenges. Mm-hmm. We need to fix pre-K through 14. We've talked about this forever. This is still a national security challenge, a nation at risk. Early in the Reagan administration, we talked about primary education as a national security challenge. Hadn't gotten much better. So, we're going to have to figure that out. Maybe we can transcend our challenge, because Americans often do that and rely on AI to fix everything. But we've got to be attentive to that. And so I just think it's a great opportunity for us, issue by issue, to sort of optimize our system. Mm-hmm. And do what happened back in the space race, become, as I like to say, a better version of ourselves as we fixate on the challenges outside of our borders. We got plenty inside, but the one thing we can all agree on is we have some really important challenges outside our borders, so let's unify at least around those to do important things. Yeah.
So what do you think success looks like if we can, get all of these policies moving forward in unison? We can dominate all these technology areas. What does success look like for you? What's at the end?
Well, it looks like families having more money, more productive. When you're more productive, your take-home pay increases through the laws of economics, and so our material circumstances will improve. I think when your material circumstances improve, through growth, we solve a lot of problems, or at least mitigate some of the significant ones. So people feel more included in society, more opportunities present. And then, if our economy begins to be more robust, then our security can be enhanced as well. And that provides more sustainability to our system. We live longer as these innovations can be applied to our health. We're smarter. I don't know that we need to be more entertained, but I suspect that will happen along the way as well. Right? Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll find more meaningful ways of engaging with others. There's certainly, I think, a market demand for that. Social media has not provided it, on balance, in my view. And so it's amazing what creative people working together, what problems they can figure out how to address. And so I think all of those things, being an optimist here today, I think all of those are real possibilities. I also think, however, that right now is a very dangerous time. Mm-hmm. And I'm not just talking about national security, because I could imagine if you had asked me to sort of lay out a dystopia, that's possible as well. These very same technologies could exacerbate certain inequalities. They could exacerbate our worst impulses and the afflictions that we personally and as a society feel. They could find their way, as they will, into the hands of malevolent actors who could use these in ways that are difficult to contemplate. So all of those things are possible as well. But I think over time you're going to see, it's almost like you're going to see things very uncertain for a short period of time, and then they'll stabilize once norms and standards manifest if we play our cards right.
Yeah. Love
That's
the
how I look at it.
optimism.
Yeah.
So one last question. You know, this is the AI plus Science Summit, so I want to make sure, you know, at the end of the day, like what does that mean to you? How do we apply AI to science? Like, what do we get from that?
I think as the chairman of the National Security Commission on Emerging Biotech, I'm looking in the lens, yes. You know, I think that's a really great example of how we took the years, decades of amazing innovations that occurred in the lab. Developing, for example, the CRISPR-Cas technology, right? And we've overlaid those many developments with the amazing potential of AI and just put everything on steroids. And I think you're going to see that in a lot of fields. I understand from working with a lot of technologists and scientists that the real innovations in science occur not so much iteratively when, you know, a hard scientific problem itself is solved, but when the tools that help us solve hard scientific problems significantly improve, or when there's a step change. So this is a change in the tools we have. And so AI overlaid with biotech, AI overlaid with quantum or hypersonics, or drone technology, or, you know, really almost any scientific discipline we're all relying on AI right now, and I just think the pace of innovation is really going to significantly change. I don't want to be pessimistic, but on the way over here, I was actually talking to one of my fellows who was in the back, and he brought up the book Future Shock, something which I talk about. And you know, remember when Alvin Toffler wrote that book? It was a long time ago, but it was sort of a fresh concept. It almost doesn't seem like a fresh concept now. Like our lives are future shock. And so here again, I think there's a lot of instability in the system just because of the disruption that AI is creating and going to create. But if you can take that instability and apply it in positive ways, I think it'll be remarkable. Yeah. Cancer will be cured, and Parkinson's, and you know, we'll all be able to sit in our basement and watch videos and eat ice cream, and have the machines working for us, right? That's progress.
We might need to run after the machines after all the ice cream.
Yeah,
but,
right,
you know,
exactly.
Well, Senator, thank you so much for bringing the positivity to this discussion today. I really like the spin you put on things, and love hearing about all of your work and how you're trying to solve the challenges of the day. We really appreciate having you here.
No, thanks for having me.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank you.